Trying to get the live link. Where is that? All right. I was able to get it. Okay. Got it. All right, Andrew. So this morning we're going to be covering a post that was removed and kind of walking through, as the moderators of the Reddit group, why we removed this post, because there's things that we like about it, and then there are things that we were having a discussion about when it comes to looking at a Reddit post and trying to decide, okay, is this breaking a rule or not? The things that I'm looking for and that Andrew are looking for is, this post, is it creating more fear in people who may read this? Is it spreading information that is outdated? Is it, that fear, right, creating more fragility? If we look at the rules of the subreddit, we don't want people to be creating, I don't want to say drama. We obviously don't want people to be spamming or advertising, but it's really just that giving medical advice, promoting this anti-fragility mindset, and then keeping the most up-to-date information kind of circulating, which is really hard to stay on top of. So I'm just going to go ahead and share this post real quick, and we'll cover exactly why we're not a fan of this. All right. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Okay, so the post provides a little bit of context about their experience, but also mentions several products and YouTube links that they found helpful, which is totally fine. We want people to share their experience such that they might give hope or some help to another person in the Reddit group. So if we kind of just break down this post, is they had a herniation, several bulging discs, and they approached and heard maybe from a provider that they had essentially lost their natural curvature of their spine and their neck. And they have then gone on to maybe explained why they thought that this was an issue, or what they've been told by another provider, and that the loss of curvature will cause degeneration in their discs over time, that sitting forward and having a neck posture that many of us have when we sit at desks or play games, like this person's a gamer, and that these issues will catch up as we get older. And then what I did like is them sort of reminding us that having pain, or neck or back pain, it's not totally the end. So is there anything else, Andrew, that I missed?
No, I think that's all right.
Okay. So the loss of curvature of your spine, right? So again, just coming back to the post, taking a step back, I have no problem as a moderator that they shared the neck stretching tools, the exercises, and things like that. I do think in some of the exercise videos, there is a very hyper focus on structure that can be nocibic. But that's not what we're going to talk about today. We're going to actually use scoliosis as an example of how a curvature can potentially relate to natural, or as this person is saying losing their natural curvature. So if you have imaging and you've been told, hey, the shape of your spine is changing, we're going to use scoliosis as the extreme example and the literature that's surrounding that to sort of help debunk some of these things. So degeneration of the discs in the spine over time will happen no matter the curvature of your back. So maybe this person is worried that the curvature will speed that up, but as the research shows, that as we get older, the prevalence of disc bulges or degeneration or degenerative disc disease is extremely common, even as young as 20 and in your 30s.
Yeah, so because it is so common, pretty much the conclusion of like a giant research article that had like 3,000 people in it. They were pretty much just saying because degeneration is so common, it's pretty normal. So it's just normal age related changes that happen to a normal healthy spine that gets used um, on the day to day. So pretty much it's like the degeneration and stuff is like similar to having wrinkles on our face, but in this example for the spine, it's just like wrinkles on our disc or on our spine there.
Yeah, and so if we use the example of spinal curvature in scoliosis, right? We have seen in the literature that scoliosis is not caused by slouching or poor posture. So this person had mentioned that, if we look at, the person had mentioned sitting at the desk having quote unquote poor or a posture that is sustained could be leading to these issues. But even in the most extreme examples, we're finding that the curvature is scoliosis is genetic or even unknown. There's many factors that are associated with the development of scoliosis, but we haven't quite, as a entire body of literature or research community or science community, given one singular cause or even
Yeah, it's hard to
multiple.
pinpoint. Yeah,
Yeah.
hard to
So,
pinpoint one reason there.
yep. So these people that have scoliosis have a curvature that is obviously different than everyone else. And while back pain can be common in people who have scoliosis, the severity of that pain is not really well correlated to the severity of the curvature. So, Andrew, how would you take that statement and apply it to someone who's worried about just a little bit of curvature loss in their spine?
Yeah, so I think there was a study showing that like people with really severe or like a high grade scoliosis, there was a possibility that this person either doesn't have pain or some other people they are still able to get out of pain despite having such a quote unquote structural issue there. So that kind of gives us like a small peep on like what pain is, and it's not entirely structural. If these people with this quote unquote structural abnormality or variation can still be pain free or still be very functional on the day to day there.
Yeah. And so I think just knowing, because we discussed this a little bit and we were kind of going back and forth on how to tackle this subject, and we were thought what would be helpful for people from our perspectives, like what's helpful. And I kind of reframed it, and I could pull up the post again, because I asked Andrew, like, well, what's potentially for people who come across this post that might have a little bit of worry about their curvature of their spine, because maybe they've been told by a provider, hey, you're losing the curvature of your spine. So we were kind of thinking, okay, well, if you came across this post, you might be induced with a little bit of worry and a little bit more fear. And so that's why we feel confident about addressing these things. So what can be helpful to know is, yes, that we just mentioned about degeneration being a normal process, that not all the severity of a curvature does not necessarily correlate with the severity of symptoms. And then the specificity of exercises might not actually even really matter so much as well. So it's more about maybe taking a step back and instead of finding the answer to addressing your neck or upper back pain with like a specific exercise, maybe it's take a step back and just find that general exercise might be more beneficial or more important instead of trying to pigeonhole yourself into one specific thing. And Andrew, what would you say about just general exercise for pain versus
I think
specificity?
yeah, so I think Annie and I were like touching on this topic before as well, because it's hard to say that very specific exercises are pretty much in the literature. It's like a general exercise is very similar to quote unquote specific corrective exercises. So there's not really a big difference. So that pretty much comes down to if there is a big difference in reducing pain or whatnot, then probably that we should be asking people about what barriers do they have to doing meaningful activities. It's like, are there and is there anything that's stopping you from doing things that matter in your life? It's like if you have to pick up your kid off the floor or just pick up your kid in general for you to play with them, then maybe you doing neck exercises isn't super important, but instead you practicing lifting weights is something more important. It's like, how can we practice lifting weights off the floor? And then exploring that can be worthwhile versus let's only focus on neck exercises or something.
Yeah, so I think that that covers the post specifically. I do want to mention that I might actually copy some of this person's exercises and reshare them because, or encourage them to repost with their experience instead of like a very specific explanation. Because as we can see from the literature, these are a little bit more outdated. And I mean, I like using the extreme example of scoliosis because it's like everybody's situation is different. But if we can glean some helpful information from people who have the worst spine curvature, then if we've been told we are losing, and there is an issue I have with the losing of the curvature as well. It's like, how do we measure that consistently over a period of time, and how do we know we just haven't always had a little bit of this curvature? Maybe we have been going to somebody that's been doing X-rays, imaging for years and years on end. But I even think the consistency is might be a problem. But when we talk about scoliosis, there's also some literature that shows that there isn't really anything that you can't do, like just by having that particular diagnosis. When we think about, um, there's a gentleman named Lamar Grant, which I'll share a quick picture of. Have you heard of Lamar Grant?
I don't think so.
He is a powerlifter, and
Cool.
he set some intense records. Let me make sure that so
That's so cool to see. Yeah.
he's got a pretty strong curvature, and yet he was a world record holder, at 17, apparently at 123 pounds, setting a world record of 524.
524.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
so
crazy.
having a little bit of spinal curvature, the point of this is it's not a death sentence, as the original poster has stated, which I really appreciate. I just think there could be a little bit more tact, and there's nothing against the person posting. It's more of just, as a moderator, we wanted to come on and talk about what posts do we look at and consider removing or confirming with the auto moderator that, hey, maybe some nuance needs to be added to this post.
Yeah. So I think the exercises posted are like super cool, right? It's like, hey, these are specific neck exercises for you to explore. And if they help you, then that's such a good thing. And asking people or giving people a way to explore using the neck or using the back in different ways can be such an informative experience. It's like, hey, if we do practice bending and moving our thoracic, does that feel better for us? If it does, then that exercise for us might be super beneficial.
Yeah, I think coming back to, be not only making sure that you've spoken with your general practitioner, trying to find a movement provider that can help you make sense of some of these things, which is difficult because obviously some provide explanations that are a little outdated. But if you ever hear an explanation and it sort of gives you pause about how it makes you feel. If it makes you feel like you're at a disadvantage because of some structure, that to me is maybe a little bit of a red flag explanation versus a, hey, these are normal things that happen over time. These are normal findings. It's like, yes, you're having pain. And to recap, it's like if we can look at scoliosis literature that says there's no strong correlation to the amount of curvature and the amount of severity of pain, then how much of that does it really matter in your particular case? And so I think having a strategy, as Andrew's pointing out, that is more global about what it is that's limiting you from doing, because then you can take examples like from Lamar Grant. I think even Usain Bolt might have some scoliosis as well. And so
Yeah.
it's like some of the,
Super high performing athletes
yeah.
have
And
scoliosis and they're really good at what they do still.
and sometimes I pause when I talk about comparing general population to like athletes, but if you, they still have the potential still there for people. Like we don't just, just because they're elite athletes doesn't mean that there are any really
They're
different
not
other than,
human.
yeah, exactly. I mean, yes, they might have some athletic genetic components, but you know, they still have this similar potential to somebody who has scoliosis or is worried about loss of curvature of the spine. So I think that settles everything that I wanted to mention about this post. Is there anything else that you want to mention, Andrew?
Did we want to touch on posture at all, or
We could, yeah. Um, why don't you, since you have the article, um, I can pull that up as well. This is, Andrew is essentially starting to talk about posture, and in the original post, you know, the worry about sitting posture, and we're going to show you a little bit of what is the more recent opinion about posture as it relates to pain in the spine.
yeah, I think there's a graphic at the very bottom there if you want to just scroll all the way down and pull up the picture.
Sure, let's do this. This picture?
All the way at the bottom. Yeah, that one. I think you click on it, it should enlarge as well.
You're right. Okay, how's that?
There we go. Yeah. Yeah, pretty much this article is just talking about how there's not really any one single correct posture, and the evidence is pointing towards that the best posture is the quote unquote next one or changing posture that we go through. Because if I ask you to sit up perfectly straight and looking nice for hours and hours on end, then that would probably get pretty uncomfortable. And it's pretty interesting to see that people who are in pain really stick to these rules that they hear maybe from a professional at one time or just a general public saying the nicest posture is the best posture, so I should always be in this position, and they take it as law and something that they can't break. And then pretty much if we're always in one position all day or like for a while because we have to do work, then the muscles in that very specific posture could get tired and get a little bit achy, and if we don't change it, then we might actually keep increasing the pain in this very specific very specific posture there.
Yeah, so when I think about posture as it relates to pain, it really only matters for managing of symptoms. So if when you sit down, slouching hurts, you're going to naturally adopt a more upright posture. And what Andrew's trying to say is that people will hear, "Oh, well, this is how I have to sit." And if you like are sitting upright to combat pain and you're having pain, it's not the posture that you can tolerate. So adopting the next position that you can tolerate might be slouching. And I even find a lot of people who have neck pain are very upright and they're extended through like the thoracic spine. So a sort of, if this is you and you're like, well, if I slouch, it actually feels a little bit better. I call it hanging on your bones. If we think about sitting upright, the muscles on the back are all